My first butterfly knife was some cheap, flimsy thing that I got at a thrift store. I enjoyed it, but it wasn't going to create a love for this hobby anywhere close to the way that I feel now. The first balisong that really changed things for me was the Benchmade 51. I modded it with the Zenith Live Blade from Flightanium, and when I flipped that knife, I experienced a balisong on bushings for the first time, and it was honestly life-changing. It was such a step above anything else that I had tried at the time. It felt solid in a way that I had never experienced before. That made me want to dive in even deeper than I already was, and is the reason I started collecting in the first place. Today, I wanted to ask a question that's been on my mind a lot recently. What makes a balisong worth flipping? What makes this thing, a fidget toy made of metal that can cut you, actually something that you want to pick up on a regular basis? You see, I own a ton of balisongs now. Having a collection like this is honestly incredible. It allows me to reference a lot of different examples when we're reviewing new products or evaluating something, but there is a catch. I can't flip all of them. Like, there literally isn't enough time in the day for me to incorporate all of my various knives and trainers into my life. Also, regardless of actual time limitations, people just end up liking some things more than others. Out of my massive collection, I only actively flip a specific few balisongs. But I think this is a pretty common occurrence, actually. Everybody has a favorite thing that they interact with more than other things, be that a social media app, YouTuber, or piece of a collection. Today, I wanted to look at specifically, in the case of balisongs, this case to be exact, what makes me keep coming back? What are the elements that draw my attention, and how can I be more conscious of them? Ooh. Oh, it's heavy. To answer that question, I have collected the top 6 balisongs in my collection in order of how often I flip them. This is not a list of my best or most expensive balisongs. Instead, it's what I'm picking up every day more actively than the rest of my collection. And I think there's something to be learned from that. This isn't a ranking that I intentionally chose either. It's just what has come to be over time. The astute among you may notice that many of my grails aren't actually included on this list. A big reason for this is that a grail status usually hinges more on price and rarity instead of meaning something is actually good to flip on a regular basis, be that for technical or aesthetic reasons. To address this, I am going to be making another video in the near future focusing on what makes a balisong grail level and going over all of the most expensive or rare knives in my collection, so make sure to subscribe and hit the notifications to not miss that. Also, real quick before we move on, this wasn't scripted, but I have this new tie-dye shirt on that I think is really sick. We have these now at willhirsch.gay. They're real tie-dye with embroidery, and I think it looks freaking awesome. So yeah, they're like these nice kind of oversized shirts. I don't know how many of these we actually have. This will be a limited time thing, so if you want one, definitely get one while we have it. Check out willhirsch.gay. The link is in the description. Yeah, back to the video. So let's take a look at what balisongs I actually use from my massive collection and see what it is that really keeps me coming back so often. Every balisong on this list is one that I love deeply. They are the knives that I pick up every single day to use and flip out of my entire collection, so being anywhere on this list is obviously a big deal. The Heibel Invictus is perhaps one of the best examples of a big deal. It is first up on my list at number 6 and is easily one of my personal favorites of all time. It has this beautiful design with matching blackening on the handles and blade, and features incredible laser-etched accents that look like lightning across each handle with a tiger Damascus-like pattern on the blade. It is genuinely fantastic in looks, but it has the performance to match as well. That performance is what initially attracted me to this balisong. Really, it's this wonderful combo of looks and rock-solid flipping that keep me coming back. Honestly, there's only a few factors that I think lead to me picking this slightly less often than the other entries on this list. I love the blade on this Balisong. It's got a fantastic design, but that sharp tip on it is intimidating to me. A lot of my daily flipping is mostly passive, something I do to keep my hands busy more than something I'm actually focused on. This means that a lot of my Balisongs, which are more likely to harm me, especially if I do something stupid when I'm not paying attention, just end up in my pocket less. I will say that when I am paying attention and being intentional about my flipping, this is often one of the first knives I will gravitate towards. I find the weight of this Balisong quite pleasant. It's not heavy by any means, but it is a bit chunky and slow. This means that it takes more effort in general to change the direction of the Balisong while it's in motion. This is a great feature if you like slower, more methodical flipping, though with how often I flip, this minor difference can have massive consequences. RSIs like carpal tunnel can be much more likely to occur over extended use with heavier feeling ballies. I think this tends to be less of a problem for younger flippers, but if you're over the age of 25 like I am, taking care of your wrists is something that is extremely important in a hobby like this. Because of this, I will often consciously opt out on carrying this thing for an entire day and instead go with something a bit lighter for longer term use. Even with all of that said, I still flip this thing all the time, and my affinity for it is split pretty heavily between both enjoying the looks of it and the overall high flipping performance. I think both of these factors play a pretty important role in me wanting to interact with it as much as I do. Next up, we have a Balisong that really needs no introduction, especially on this channel. The Machinewise Serif has consistently been one of my favorite knives in general for a multitude of reasons. The first thing that really impressed me about the Serif was the impeccable build quality. The precision of manufacturing displayed on this thing is just obvious from the first moment you hold it. It is rock solid in so many ways, and the sound, I was blown away by just the auditory sensation of closing this thing for the first time. Along with that incredible sound, you also get just as impressive flipping performance. It listens to basically anything you ask it to do with no issue, and you can control the feel of it using the adjustable weight system, which is fantastic. If it were 2 years ago, this would probably be the top Balisong on this current list. But after owning it and flipping it for so long, I have found myself EDCing it slightly less often and instead using it primarily for specific purposes. I think the major reasons behind this are similar to the Invictus, but with one key difference. First off, it is a bit heavy feeling to flip due to the length of the handles resisting changes in momentum. Especially with my preferred configuration of the medium weights, it can become a bit fatiguing to flip after a long while. But the biggest factor for me, honestly, is the comfort. Ergonomics is a hard thing to get right. There are so many individual factors that come into play when you're considering what makes something comfortable to use. Overall, the Serif actually nails the comfort aspect in many key ways. Chaplains feel awesome with the chamfered spine of the blade feeling great against the finger, and this wonderful milled texture into the faces of the handles is incredible. The problem for me is one that a lot of Machinewise Balisongs actually share. It's just really square. Now, I do think this is more of a personal preference thing, and different people will have different levels of roundness that they enjoy. It's not immediately uncomfortable in any way, but for me, with how much fanning I do in my normal flipping, these square edges do become fatiguing over a long enough time. This is a really minor nitpick type issue, by the way, but it does mean that I'm less likely to carry my Serif for multiple days at a time as compared to the other entries on this list. Instead of being something that I'm carrying with me all the time, this knife now has a more specialized role. When I am looking for a top-tier flipping experience from a technical perspective, I choose the Serif. I use it to really nail down specific tricks I've been practicing, or as my go-to knife when trying to hit a clip for Instagram or otherwise. Overall, it really is the fantastic build quality and performance resulting from that quality that keep me coming back time and again to enjoy this thing. The Crackerakin is one of the most influential balisongs of all time. It changed the game in terms of how people approached both making and flipping balisongs. So it makes a lot of sense that I would use my Kraken like all the time, and I think it's pretty easy to see why. It is a fantastic and comfortable flipper doing basically everything I could possibly want from it without issue. It is a go-to mainstay in my collection that I pick up most often when I'm learning new things and want something that is consistent, familiar, and reliable. Strangely enough, that familiarity actually turns into a slight downside in some ways. People have described the Crackerakin as the white bread of balisongs, and while I think that is a bit of a disservice to this knife, it's not entirely untrue. I do flip this thing often, picking it up every single week at least, but it usually only has my attention for a day or two at most before I'm off to more interesting things. Which, speaking of, Squid Industries has actually sent us some very interesting things in the form of the titanium Crackerakin, which is a new addition to their lineup that reimagines this knife in a new material and format. They sent us all the different blade shapes along with this awesome trainer, and I've really been enjoying them. So expect a full review of all of that sometime in the near future. Regardless of its ability to fully hold my interest, the Crackerakin is really something that I suggest everybody have in their collection. Its reliability is simply unmatched by just about anything else in the entire hobby. There's a reason that despite all of the differences in preference and flipping style, almost everybody owns a Crackerakin. I think that kind of speaks for itself. If you don't already own one, I highly recommend picking it up as it's a great addition to any collection and can help you round out your flipping capabilities. If you'd like a bit of a discount on the Crackerakin trainer or any of the other great stuff Squid offers, please consider using our affiliate link at squid.willhirsch.gay. It provides a discount on any of their awesome trainers and helps to support us at the same time. Click the link in the description or just type squid.willhirsch.gay into your browser to be brought to Squid's website, where our discount code will be automatically applied at checkout. And yes, the domain name is .gay, that is real. Just type it in, I promise. Next up is perhaps a slightly surprising entry. The Volt Pro is something that I am obviously proud of, but I'm also proud of the original Volt, and that thing is, well, nowhere close to being on this list. You see, things like personal bias kind of fade away with time. What you end up flipping on a regular basis is more a subconscious thing than a choice that you're actively making. Kind of like that random craving you get for that one fast food chain every once in a while. I see you. There's sort of a innate want to flip specific things that comes from somewhere deeper than just simple logic. And so I find myself almost surprised when I end up reaching for the Volt Pro so often. I mean, it shouldn't surprise me, I literally designed it to fit my specific preferences, but still, I just keep coming back to this thing, even more than my Kraken, and it feels like home every time. This balisong has marked a turning point in my flipping growth, and with it, I've learned so much. It's literally the balisong I learned how to scissor on. While it doesn't have the everyman factor that the Crackerakin does, I do think its slightly more specific balance profile is what keeps me coming back, along with the uniquely awesome feel and grip provided by that 3D integrated G10. Personally, I do slightly prefer the flipping feel of the false live blade version to the trainer, but the difference is really minimal overall. I can absolutely just rip combos on this thing, and I think my overall flow has improved a lot because of that. In general, I think the Volt Pro does a good job of showing that in terms of making me want to flip something, a little bit of uniqueness goes a long way. I should also bring up that it is a relatively light feeling flipper overall, which I think helps with my desire to use it for extended periods of time. Either way, it is a part of my collection that I really enjoy on a regular basis, and I often can't believe that I'm the one who designed it. I don't know, it just feels kind of crazy. I'm very proud of this thing. Next up is a balisong that I just cannot seem to shut up about. It's the G10 Wraith from EPS. What really sets the Wraith apart from my other knives is just how long I will go about flipping it. I often find myself going 1 to 2 weeks at a time with this in my pocket. I'll still flip other things in between during those times, but the Wraith stays the main thing that I am flipping for long periods. One of my very first Balisongs was the Benchmade 51. It wasn't a fantastic flipper by any means, but it helped me get into the hobby in a deeper way, and I have a lot of nostalgia for it because of that. I think one of the reasons I am so strongly drawn to the Wraith is because it feels like a perfected version of what the 51 was attempting to do. It gives me that same sense of nostalgia from its overall design to just the way that it feels in the hand. When you combine that factor with the impeccable flipping performance of this thing, you get something really special, in my opinion. On top of that, the Wraith is just plain comfortable to use. It's got impeccable rounding that is perfectly balanced to make fanning feel fantastic. It's relatively light, which allows me to flip it for longer periods without getting fatigue, and it carries momentum in an extremely pleasing way that makes it almost addictive to flip. I love it. Add in the awesome mods I recently installed from Zippy Balisong, and now you've got an extra level of customization and performance that elevates it even more for me. I seriously love what these mods have done to my enjoyment of this thing. They've had an impact far beyond what I was expecting or even really thought was possible. I think what this really shows us is that personal connection can triumph a lot when it comes to what your preferences are flipping-wise. The Wraith is just good. Plain and simple. But for me, it's elevated beyond that due to my deep nostalgia for a different product that it's similar to, and my connection to the customization aspect through the mods I've done. Even this ties back to my original Benchmade 51. I anodized the titanium liners on that thing myself back in the day using a janky 9-volt setup that was absolutely a fire hazard. Customization is one of the best ways to build a deeper connection with your Balisong. It is something that I highly encourage of anyone interested in the concept, whether through 3D printed mods from someone like Zippy or part swapping with something like the Volt Pro. You can see this is the original white and orange colorway, and then I part swapped it for this like black and orange. I think it looks sick. Also, you can do your own janky attempted anodization with a bunch of 9 volts that you plug together like an idiot and then dip it in acid. Maybe don't do that. Maybe that's a bad idea. Maybe I shouldn't have done that when I was younger. Any effort you put into your knife will strengthen your connection to it, and I think that's worth pursuing. There is only one Balisong in my whole collection that I flip more than the Wraith. My most flipped Balisong is the Squid Industries Tsunami. The Tsunami has been a sort of sleeper Balisong for me. I obviously enjoyed it all the way back in 2021 when we first reviewed it, which you can watch here, but it took me quite some time before I really appreciated it the way that I do now. You wanna know the funny truth? I don't think I was actually a good enough flipper at the time to experience what the Tsunami actually had to offer. When I bought this Production 5 Tsunami at Blade Show 2022, I enjoyed it and flipped it about as much as I do with my Serif now. But over time, especially over the past year, I just kept coming back to it. More and more, it was less often on my wall and more often in my pocket. I just couldn't put it down. And I still can't. Like the Wraith, I will carry this thing for long periods of time, but with the Tsunami, those periods end up being more like months long rather than just weeks. I have had surprisingly long stints where I basically won't flip anything else, which I never would have expected when I first got this thing. I think what makes the Tsunami so special is the incredible attention to detail that was taken with its design. It is a pleasure to use in basically every way. The exceptionally comfortable roundness of the handles perform the best out of any Bali I've tried during fans, yet the flat faces on the side mean that it's easy to regain your grip and reverse a fan. The shape of the blade being a Japanese tanto means that it is very usable for EDC purposes without being too intimidating to flip regularly. The hole pattern is simple yet aesthetically pleasing and provides the perfect amount of grip on the faces, especially when paired with this extremely pleasant texture milling. Every detail from the length of the handles to their spacing and feel has been thoughtfully crafted to provide the maximum level of experience for someone who flips all the time. When it was initially released, the Tsunami was one of the lightest titanium balisongs on the market. At first, I didn't fully understand why, but now I think I really do. It is not fatiguing at all to use this thing, even for very long sessions, which makes it easy to just keep going and going. Half the time when I use this thing for extremely long stints, I'm not even meaning to. It's just so easy to use without having to think about it that I forget that I could be using anything else. The Tsunami is weird because it wasn't crafted for everybody. If you aren't a high-level flipper, you really won't be able to get some of the benefits that it has to offer. It was made for extremely high performance flipping over long periods of time, and how good it actually was at doing that job wasn't even obvious to me until I learned how to scissor. Like, I had to learn to do that move before I could even realize that this thing is as good as it is. Wildly, over my time of owning it, this balisong has slowly shifted from something that I thought was perfectly good to perhaps one of the greatest balisongs of all time. The reasons behind this are subtle, but they're there. This balisong, out of the more than 100 that I own, is the one I flip the most. And it isn't even close. For me, that says something deeper than I can really express in a normal review. It's easy to look at the features, design, and price of a product before drawing conclusions about it, but this sort of long-term emergent value is something that is almost impossible to test for. However, over a long enough time frame, deep, thoughtful, and intentional design really does make a world of difference. That is what the Tsunami does. So, what did we learn from this? Well, I think I've discovered some of the key factors that really make a balisong something that I want to keep using day after day. Number one here is going to be comfort. How ergonomic is the knife to use? How does it feel in my hands? Does it get less comfortable with time? All of these factors will directly affect how often I feel inclined to actually use it. Number two is going to be weight. Regardless of the actual weight of the knife, various designs can feel heavier or lighter based on weight distribution. Is it effortless to change the direction of the balisong while flipping, or do I have to put in extra effort just to pull off a full twirl? These factors have a massive effect on my ability to flip in the first place and how long I can actually go for without risk of injury. Number three is going to be personal connection. Do I have a certain nostalgia or story associated with the knife? Have I put time into customizing it either myself or through a modder? Things like this directly affect my personal feelings about a balisong and therefore affect how much I enjoy using it. I'd like to keep in mind that this is an extremely subjective hobby. Flipping is a form of self-expression, and every person is going to have their own preferences and biases that make up who they are as a balisong enthusiast. It is these differences that make our community so unique and are a big part of why we keep pushing the boundaries of what flipping can be in the first place every single day. I understand that I am in a particularly privileged position with the size of my collection. For most people, the balisong you flip the most isn't the one that you've chosen from your whole collection. It's just the one you have. For me, key factor number 4 is going to be fun. The reason I flip isn't because of the access I have to any particular knife or trainer. The reason I flip isn't even because of the money I've spent, and I'm not even always trying to improve my skills while flipping. I just flip because it's fun. Any balisong that helps to amplify that feeling is a great balisong in my book. Thank you for watching. This has been a bit of a different vibe than our usual videos, but I would really like to make more of these. I think I can use this format to explore some deeper themes and ideas, so I'm really looking forward to trying that out. In the meantime, what are your most flipped balisongs? Is there any particular one that stands out in your collection for how often you use it? What factors make you want to pick up a particular knife and flip it over another one? Let me know in the comments below. I am really interested to hear how your experience differs from mine. As I was saying, I think the diversity of our our community is really what makes it special. Of course, I also want to give a big thank you to our wonderful Patreon supporters. You may have noticed that we don't really run sponsors on this channel, and that is intentional. I prefer not having to shove random subscriptions down your throat, and a big reason we're able to do that is because of the incredible support from our wonderful patrons. Every one of you, even at our lowest tier of $3 a month, supports us more than 1,000 views on one of these videos. So thank you. If you would like to join awesome people like Jaima or Disquieted Collector on the private community Discord, or just want to see videos like these days in advance of the public, consider donating. Thank you so much to everyone who has donated already, whether you're a current patron or a past supporter. All of you help to keep this channel running without Raid Shadow Legends, and that is the best thing that I could possibly ask for. I would like to extend a personal thanks to patrons PJ and Tactical Chaos for their direct and substantial support of the channel. But that's pretty much it for the moment. As always, thanks for watching.